So, over the past weekend, me and my girlfriend rewatched the Amazing Spider-Man movies. The ones with Andrew Garfield. The ones that a lot of critics don't really like, especially the second one of them. A lot of people have a real big problem with. And you know, it's always funny to watch these movies and get to know them and then wait a while and watch them again. So I tried to figure out what it was that was actually so wrong with these movies. Um, and one thing that I really did not care too much for was the fact that the way I see Spider-Man, the way that I feel like Spider-Man should be, is he's a geek, he's a nerd, much like Tobey Maguire portrayed it in his movies, that people make fun of him and these things because he's kind of geeky and he can't really help himself. Which is a really great aspect to the character. But in the case of Andrew Garfield, and this is nothing against the actor, but the character is just not conveyed as being a geek. He's more like a hipster. So, like, embrace the geek, which is a great kind of person to be, but it doesn't really feel like the way Peter Parker should be, in my opinion. I don't believe that's what people have a problem with. There is one problem with the way the movies, both of them actually, are composed, which is that Andrew Garfield's voice is too deep. I came across this several times, you know, when there's this big suspense building and things are happening and things are going crazy and there's explosions and heavy violin music and stuff like that. And then you have Spider-Man swinging in with some kind of funny punchline or something, and the voice is so deep that it drowns in the soundscape. I know it's a really geeky thing to think about, but Spider-Man is all about these puns. They need to stand out. They need to kick you in the face, and they just don't. They just drown. They just disappear. So that is actually a very, very big thing that I took away from rewatching these movies. Now, definitely the second movie had a lot more trouble than the first one did. I actually really like the relationship between Peter and Gwen Stacy, and the first movie ends up with Gwen Stacy's father dying and Peter promising him not to date her anymore because he foresees the bad guy problem where people get hurt that is close to the Spider-Man and all that stuff. So that's great. But then at the end, the very end, the last scene of the movie, he hints at, okay, perhaps he wants to break that promise because he really likes the girl. That's fine, but the movie ends there with a hint. So in the second movie, they're basically just dating again. So he took back his promise. And what happens in the beginning of the movie is that he regretting making that promise. That's completely ridiculous. Why not just not regret it in the first place? Just keep on being conflicted, saying, hey man, I really want to be close to you, but I can't get past this feeling that we shouldn't because, I promised your father with his dying wish. That stuff, instead of just going back and forth. I know that is the real way that it goes in all kinds of teenage relationships, but it just doesn't really play well in a movie when you just keep going back and forth for no apparent reason. Then there's this, the main villain out of the three that are in this movie is Electro. And I know that all villains in Spider-Man movies are supposed to be psychotic. They're supposed to be something very, very much wrong with their brains. They're supposed to be crazy. And okay, they chose to give this guy a different flavor of crazy. He is needy, he is annoying, he is... you don't get the feeling that he's crazy, you just get the feeling that this guy needs help. And I get that that's kind of a new thing to try and do and all that, but he's just never really a bad guy. And of course it doesn't add anything good that the visual effects on him they don't really work. And And so you never really know whether you want to be angry or feel sorry for the bad guy, or where you want to go, what you want to do. And and when he's transformed into Electro, one of the first things he does is he starts teleporting things. I mean, it's okay in some parts of the movie where he gives an electric shock to something and it just blows up or flies away. That's okay, but he just teleports a truck from one side of him to the other side of him. That is not what electricity does. And they keep on coming up with these talks about what electricity does. You know, at one point in the beginning, when he gets his powers, he makes this wild thing that makes the power go out in all of New York. And two skyscrapers collapse. Because skyscrapers collapse when they lose power. There is really something visually wrong in this movie. There's really some things that are not thought out, that are just built for being visually compelling without at all thinking about what it is you're trying to show your viewers. Then, after all these problems with Electro, which really ruins the movie, then you get to the ending, and Electro is defeated, all that stuff. And then in the end, they spent like what 5-10 minutes or something on throwing in one of the like top 5 Spider-Man stories of all times, the death of Gwen Stacy. Okay, so there's a really popular comic book where the Green Goblin kills Gwen Stacy, and it drives Spider-Man crazy, and he gets to the point where he has to decide if he can actually take his revenge and kill someone. And obviously he doesn't, because he's Spider-Man. Spider-Man doesn't kill, but that is the whole emotional aspect to it, because he's so angry and so frustrated. But they just take the story and say, okay, so what did you say? Green Goblin, make a Green Goblin, and he kills Gwen Stacy. Okay, make a Green Goblin, kill Gwen Stacy. Great. That's it. That's all they take away from the story. So I get why they want to kill Gwen Stacy. I completely get it. They want to move on to Mary Jane. I know at this point Sony felt like they were building a giant franchise with 1 billion movies. So I get that, but it just didn't feel like part of the movie or part of the story they were telling. And it's this whole Goblin thing was just like thrown in there instead of being a real cohesive part of the story. Yeah, that was what threw me off. That was what I disliked about the movie. All that being said, it's a very pretty movie. It's really beautifully set up. The visual effects in there are stunning. I actually enjoyed watching it again. I feel like when I watch a movie with these kinds of problems, then I can put a pin in the problem and keep watching without bothering too much with how annoying that was. So I can still enjoy the movie because it still has everything a Spider-Man movie needs, except maybe for a plot. Yeah, anyway, that's what I felt like upon rewatching the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield. And tell me what you think. Bye-bye.